Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy-nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, it's Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and you're joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. Today, I'm joined by Tabatha Thorell. Thanks so much for joining us.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So tell me all about you and why you do the things you do.
All right. I am Tabatha Thorell. I am a speaker, coach, co-author, investor, and now podcaster, adding one more tool to the tool belt. I'm also a mom to 5 girls, and
Wow.
yes. And I married my high school sweetheart. We've been together 23 years, married 16. We live in rural Nebraska where we raise our girls and live kind of just like a more quiet life, but just, it suits us. I wish we lived closer to a beach. That would be the only caveat there. But yeah, we've grown different businesses and grown our families here, and our families are here. And so, yeah, we love it.
So, you have a lot of titles, which is fantastic. Not that we're leaning into titles, right? But
Right.
you're doing lots of things. So how did
Yeah.
that kind of come about, leaning in all those different directions? Some people love doing one thing. I'm similar. Like I love multitasking and doing lots of
Yes.
things as well. So tell me how that kind of unfolded for you.
Well, for me, I got a bachelor's in marriage and family studies, and I always thought that I was going to go and be a marriage counselor. And I'll never forget the day when I walked into my advisor's office and I said, okay, what are the next steps? Because when you're going to be a counselor, you need to get your master's, your doctorate, just depending like, how far up the ladder you want to go. And if I was going to invest this time and money into something, I wanted to make sure that it was what I wanted to do. And she looked at me and she said, Tab, by the time they get to us, most marriages end. And I was like, if I'm going to be a marriage counselor, I want to help marriages. I don't want to like have them end. So I said, okay, I got to like readdress some stuff. And I knew like me and my boyfriend at the time, like we'd been together for 7 years and I knew we'd get married. And so I was like, okay, what do I want to do? Where are we going to live? What are my options? And I remember in high school, I had heard of coaching. There was a documentary series back then when reality TV was actually reality TV. It was a documentary. And there was this life coach. And I remember thinking, that's exactly what I want to do. I loved human behavior, learning about why people do what they do. But where I lived, it wasn't a thing. Like life coaching, we didn't have all the online exposure of what coaching was. And so I just kind of put that in the back burner. So when I graduated college, I remember vaguely kind of thinking of that again, didn't know how I was going to do it. No problem, whatever. So I kind of moved on. Where we lived, there was not a lot of opportunities for that kind of thing, helping people in that direction, unless you were a therapist, a counselor. So I started working at our local YMCA, and there was opportunities to work with people, like kind of in a group exercise kind of format, but it was more like welcoming people. And I just love the energy of people. And I was like, okay, yeah, I like this. Well, I had a love of fitness. I loved what it did for my body. I loved what it did for my mind. I loved like kickboxing and just like adrenaline thing. And so I started attending classes, and that morphed into me becoming an instructor, then kind of coaching people. That morphed into like nutrition coaching, which had an opportunity of direct selling company. Like it just all kind of fell into place over the next like 5 to 10 years. We had 3 babies. I was able to start this business, all those kind of things. And so it was just kind of like this formulation that I really didn't plan on. It just kind of like these opportunities came up and I was like, okay, I'll take it. And then another opportunity came up. My husband was a farmer. We were real estate investors. And we just never seemed to have enough time together as a family. And so I thought if I could bring in some money, even just like supplemental income, then I would be able to bring back like time, like have my husband come home more, just be a family. We had these 3 girls at the time. And I thought if I could just bring some income. So as the opportunities came, I just said yes. I was one that I was like, if I can just, earn a little bit more income, like how, alleviate some of that stress. And so that was really the heart of like that part of the journey. And honestly, to be completely vague and real here, I didn't have that identity because I thought that identity was, the corporate ladder woman, puts her kids in daycare, works 12 hours, like I just had this vision of something that really wasn't. But I thought, okay, this is where it gets tricky. And this is where I think this podcast, comes into play when we talk about money. But I'd never been like my own business, my own company, my own thing. So doing that was scary. And again, I just trusted it. And, I told my husband and he trusted me, but I know that he was like, this is crazy. I just kept doing these things and I had to stop. And I had that moment when our fourth daughter was born. I really just stopped and was like, okay, I have to figure out who I really want to serve and what I really want for our family financially. I have to really sit in that. And then we had daughter number 5. And those were moments when I had to really reflect on what I wanted to do, who I wanted to serve, what our family wanted to look like, everything financially, all of this, because in this whole journey for me for 16 years, my husband's farming. I mean, he's a farmer. And if any of you know anything about farming or ag or anything, it's the government, like with government and stock markets and all of these things, it's up and down and all over. So through the course of 16 years, it wasn't like he had a consistent paycheck. Like it was makeshifting and MacGyvering is what we call it. And like, taking this money and putting it over here and, doing all these things, all messy. Like it was just so messy. And then there was a year where, tax stuff didn't get done properly because we thought we were going to get this land opportunity and we didn't get it. And with all of this, we have kids and we have marriage and we have money and we have, my business and
All the things.
all the
Yeah.
things. But the beauty of that is like it truly, and I know this sounds so like bumper sticker, but it truly is who you're becoming in the journey. Like the destination truly, it really isn't. Like if tomorrow my bank account said $1 million, yeah, that'd be awesome. But you know what I'd do? I'd look at that and I'd be like, how can I invest it? Like, how can I have this come back to me in dividends? How can I invest this for my daughters? What can I do to make an impact here?
And I think knowing, to do the right things and whatever strategy that looks like, and everybody's different, but
Yeah.
having your money make money along the way, I think that's the strategy, right?
Yeah.
And kind of talking through what you had said, like same heart centric, like heart on my sleeve.
Yep.
And then for me, like it's, my world of finance is like financial literacy is so important. And again, you don't want to keep what bottled up. You want to be
Yep.
able to let people know they're worthy, regardless of where they're at, and that they have a seat at the table. So like for us, we do a lot of financial literacy, a lot of classes, online classes, and different kind of talks to that too. And granted, that's really broad based, and that's definitely kind of a more of a finance 101 in
Right.
essence, right? Just being able to give that education. Obviously, if you go deeper, that's where the
Right.
relationship comes in.
Yeah. I think when you can get to the heart of, because everybody wants a result or that thing at the end, like I just listened to a podcast and they talked about, you don't go to the chiropractor because you want to go to the chiropractor. You go to the chiropractor to alleviate your back pain, and so there's a lot of things that can alleviate the back pain, right? Like you can go with the chiropractor, you can go with the painkiller, you can go with the oils or the wraps or whatever. You just want to alleviate that back pain. And so, like, when people probably come to you, it's not that they want the financial literacy because, they're like, because, oh, I want to be so financial literate. It's like, I want to know what money can do for me so that I can live the XYZ type of life or, without that pain or the stress or the anxiety that money brings. If I become literate, then that alleviates that thing, right?
Totally. It brings you to your why at the end of the day, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, everybody is obviously coming at a different point in their life along their
Yes.
journey as they're learning
Yes.
and growing, right? But it's also, I don't know, there's an interesting kind of self-worth tie-in to a lot of this, like
Yes.
realizing that you are wonderful and fantastic the way that you are, and you're coming to the table where you're coming in your journey, and that's totally okay. It's totally
Yes.
okay.
Oh, yeah. I think worthiness and money, it's such a loaded topic because okay, so for instance, my background, I mean, I like to say we're like right above lower class. I mean, I remember being on food stamps. My dad was just a blue collar worker. My mom had an autoimmune disease, so she couldn't work. She was bedridden. We had always medical bills. So my dad worked. I mean, sometimes like 80-hour weeks, 90-hour weeks, like crazy to put food on the table. But we hear all the terms, like money doesn't grow on trees and you buy everything at a discount. Don't waste. And there was never really anything even to save. Like we didn't even, my parents didn't, I mean, we kind of talked about savings, but there was nothing even left over to save. It was survival. Like it was survival mode. So when I got older, it was like that. I worked, I hustled in college. I really didn't get the full college experience because I was working 40 hours as a waitress, bartender, whatever I could do. And when I was waitressing, I was hustling. I mean, I was going back and forth. Can I take an extra table? I have a smile on my face. I'm doing whatever I can to make the experience of the customer better because I knew that they would tip me, right? So like it was that constant like, okay, so I can have money for here. And if I want the extra, then I knew I had to do this. And I had that work ethic and I'm so glad for it. Like I really truly am. And when we were first married, that was me and my husband. He hardworking farmer, grew up that way, So we were hard work, hustle, hustle, hustle. But when I look back on it, it wasn't how hard we worked. If you got paid by the hard work that you did, my dad would be the richest person on the planet. My husband would be the richest person on the planet because they work really, really hard. And when I learned the concept of working smarter, you still work hard and you still have integrity and loyalty, but it's like working smarter, becoming more financially like literate, become like work, invest, look at things as investments and what is that return on that for time, for money, for your communication. How are you impacting the world? What can you serve the world? How can you get back? When you have that learning and understanding of it, like it just elevates everything and it does make it more of an even playing ground because growing up, I never knew a millionaire, even close. And if you were rich in my town, you were a doctor, a lawyer, a banker. Like those were the like epitome. Like if you were a doctor in our town, like you were like high class, living the life. And now I look at them and I'm like, oh my gosh, they have so much debt and school debt. I look at it just so differently of like the perceptions. And then for me, it was like a value based. It was like when I get to that point, then I'll be valuable, especially on an entrepreneur journey. Because people say, like, when did you become successful? Or how did you know? And I still don't think I am. I still view myself as like that hustle and grind, and I haven't met that financial goal.
You are listening to the Platinum Talks Wealth Podcast.
Hey, it's Jennifer. I wanted to take a quick break to remind you that you are worthy to have a seat at the table when it comes to money and your finances. Both me and my team at Platinum Wealth Management, want to meet you where you are, whether you're starting out, starting over, or have been investing for years. Reach out to us at platinumwealth.net or call us at 775-717-0001. We'd be honored to help.
And now, back to the podcast.
But when I truly look back and I look at it in a third party, like perception, like if I was coaching myself, giving myself grace, giving myself forgiveness, and allowing myself to really celebrate the wins, like truly celebrate the wins. Like I always tell people I took the last 3 years off, and I look back and I'm like, I really didn't. I co-authored a book. I took a coaching speaking mastermind so that I could be a better speaker coach for other people. I invested in time, like all this other stuff. Yes, while I was raising these 5 babies and having these newborns and all this stuff. But when I say, oh, I took 3 years off, it's like discounting all of those things. Why? Because I didn't make revenue during that time. I was still investing in my mind, in my marriage, in my parenting skills. so that when I relaunched my business and the revenue came in, I could withstand all of that. I could withstand it because I was already feeding my mind. I was working smarter, not necessarily physically harder, if that makes sense. So like all of those things attribute to where I'm going, and I see where I'm going, and I might be the only one, but that's okay. So I'm feeding my mind in those areas, and with like, financial things, like, for me, it's like saving, but also using that as investing, because when you invest it and you have money working for you, you're being smarter with your money and just those little tweaks. And I might not know everything in the financial world, because you could probably use terms that would just go way over my head. But it's like, I don't need to know all of those terms to know the things that are going to advance my life, advance myself, so that when things come, like we had, oh man, it's probably been 7 years. Let's see, what year are we in? 2024? Yeah, I think it was 2017. We had a big tax hit. And there was just some things with some land that we thought we were going to get, and we didn't get it. So we were thinking we were going to have that income, and we didn't. So then we owed the government a big chunk of change, like a big chunk. And I know my husband, he was deflated. I know he felt ashamed when he came to me when we were sitting in the car after meeting with the accountant, and I could feel it. And I just looked at him and I grabbed his face and I said, I love you. We will get through this. It does not matter. Like, we have what it takes. Like, just trust that. And because I said those words, it was like, 1,000 pounds was lifted off his shoulders, and he was able to go forward. And, we were able to recoup that, and we survived. We did more than survive. We thrived, and we did those things. But for a lot of marriages, there's the blame game and there's pointing fingers, and you can't do that. I buried my head in the sand. I didn't know the things that were going on in the farming. So that's on me for not being aware of that. I can't put it all on his shoulders just because it was his occupation. I'm his wife, we're equal partners. And so I said, I'm going to take responsibility too, and saying, I didn't look at the books the right way. I didn't come to the account the right way. We both had error. So we're going to go into this and we're going to move forward together stronger. And I think because we both made that decision to not blame anybody or point fingers, that's why we were able to thrive.
So thank you for sharing all of that. Gosh, so many different amazing nuggets in this conversation so far. I want to circle back on something that you had said, kind of tying into money memories, right? You
Yes.
had said, hey, here's how I grew up. Here's the town we grew up in. Here's what that looked like.
Yeah.
What's one of the first money memories that comes to your mind that you think, really molded your relationship to money as an adult?
I was thinking about that because you asked that question, and I was like, oh, it's like, that one memory. Um, Honestly, I just remember, all my friends having the name brand stuff, like, name brands, Nike and all of these things. And for my family, Christmas was big. Even though like money was tight, my parents always seemed to make like, my dad would do the extra hours and, get the extra money or whatever. And I remember I got this pullover. This is going to date me a little bit. In the 90s, these pullover coats were like super popular. I can't even remember what brand they were, but they had like the sports logo. And so we live in Nebraska, so Huskers were big. And I was a Charlotte Hornets fan, honestly, because of the colors. Like, I'll just be real. I love the colors. Okay. And everybody else in my social circle, we just love the Charlotte Hornets, Larry Johnson. Okay. And I remember I got this for Christmas, and I just remember feeling for the first time like I fit in when I went to
Oh,
school. Like, I've got this. And I know that doesn't really attribute to your, but like, I remember feeling that, and it was a thing, and it was a more expensive name brand thing. And just remember like, oh, I got my jacket. Like, I've made it. And I think so many of us, even as adults, you get that name brand bag or whatever, and you think like, oh, I've made it. Like, I've got it. And I look back and it was like, it's so silly to me because now I actually don't wear a lot of name brand stuff. Like, even if I can, I choose, like, I don't like stuff with brands on them, and I kind of like shy away from buying stuff like that. But I tell you this story because like in that moment, I mean, I was like a fifth or sixth grader. And I'm sure before that, going out to eat, my family was a family of 7. So it's like, you just got the minimum dollar menu or one pizza to share for everybody. Those little things, I'm sure planted those seeds. But I didn't really think that we were poor because we did have a nice house. I did have, nice clothes. It wasn't like people pointed at me and laughed and said I was the poor kid, but it was like I always compared, my off-brand shoes to the Nike shoes, or my coat, that people had, or whatever, the sweatshirt, the thing like that. So, I mean, in that moment, I just remember feeling like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I've got it, And so always wanting that, or like feeling that just in the social aspect of it, I think is really where, I saw that the most, or like my first memory of that. And my sister was always trying to work to get the name brand jeans, because she was not going to wear the off brand. She was going to do whatever it took to go and get that, but yeah. So for me, those were like the first thing. And then just my parents, saying, that's too expensive. The words are so powerful. Like in our household today, I really try not to use those kind of words, because I'm like, too expensive compared to what? Or, like we just haphazardly use these, like we don't have enough. Or the words rich. My kids ask me, Mom, are we rich? And I'm like, well, actually, compared to most of the world, yes, we are. Like, and like, are we wealthy? And just using those words in terms where they can break it down and be like, actually, we are very blessed. We have, this amount, but are we rich compared to, XYZ person? Probably not, And so just kind of breaking those barriers of what the words mean, because I think words hold so much weight. I was never called poor. Like growing up, like no one ever said like you're the poor kid. I think the reason why I felt inadequate financially was, like I said, the comparison game. All my friends got whatever they want whenever they wanted, name brand, it didn't matter. They got it. And I really only got things on my birthday and Christmas. That was it. We didn't get anything outside of that. Unless it was like, a school program and you didn't have the shoes or something like that, specifically an occasion, but like otherwise it was birthdays and Christmas.
So I feel like that obviously ties right into kind of the financial infidelity question. And you did
Yes.
talk about, some of the things with, taxes and
Mhm.
situations there too. But what would you say is a financial infidelity that you've either experienced or heard of that you think that others could learn from?
I think taxes are a big one. My dad took care of all the finances. So like my mom never like looked at the books, or, I think her head was in the sand, and I don't think he necessarily liked it that way. I just think that's how he grew up. He just took on all the burden of that. But with that came a lot of like, standoffish. Like he just wouldn't talk about it. It was just like he just worked harder, like to make it. And then when tax season came up, he was always super stressed trying to do his own taxes and all that stuff. And so when I got into high school, I remember I had to fill out like my FAFSA for college. My parents didn't do that. Like I did that, which if you're a parent on here, make your kids do it. I mean, I was angry at the time, but I look back and I think of all the things that my parents did allow me to do, open up my own savings account, my own checking account. And I did that all on my own. They didn't take me to the bank and show me. I just did it because I had money and I needed to put it somewhere. I went to college and I knew I needed to apply for loans because my parents didn't have the money to send me to school. So if I was going to go to school, I was going to have to make the way, and I was going to do that. So I was kind of, really aware of that. Now, and then same thing goes like when I was working in school and stuff like that, all that. But when I got married, my husband was the predominant breadwinner. And with farming and our real estate, we had to have an accountant because trying to do the books ourselves just was not working. Well, they had been with this accountant I mean, his parents had the accountant, so it was this year's relationship. So I just kind of like put my head in sand. I'm like, okay, you got this. Like, you got this stuff and I know nothing about it. Here you go. I just would make money, like side hustles, like sell sandwiches and do braids and do all these different stuff and fitness coaching and whatever it took to get us to go on a family vacation, and he kind of took that on. And so for two reasons. First of all, because I didn't know the farming stuff. Like in farming, there's a lot of financial in and out. Like if people really understood, it's crazy. And it just
Yeah.
made my head spin. And so I didn't want to worry about it. So I just like stepped away. I felt like if I didn't know about it, I didn't have to worry about it, or like take drive of that. And then two, it was like, you know, see no evil, hear no evil. Like if I didn't see it or hear it, like I didn't have to feel it. So I just kind of stepped away. And, that year it did bite us because I didn't step in. There were some things that I had red flags, like with our accountant at the time. And not that she wasn't great, but it was just old school. And I just kind of kept quiet. And then when that happened, I was like, okay, we need to make some shifts. And it took a few years for us to make a shift and switch accountants. But I finally stepped in and said, like, okay, I don't want to rock the boat, but I need to rock the boat because I can no longer put my head in the sand and just say, you take it. Like I have to put this here. My attention to detail is kind of all or nothing. So it's like I need to know everything about it or like nothing about it. And I think with finances, that can be scary. And because I would say numbers aren't my strong suit, I can get confused in that. And so then I just like push it away, like with finances. And so I have to find something that I fully understand and break it down because otherwise I just get angry. Like my default is anger. So like if I can take something and break it down, even with like, are we taking taxes in account of that? Are we taking insurance in account of that? I never want in our marriage for me to like overpower him. Not that he's like not, it's not that he is telling me to, submissive to him, but he's, the leader of our family and he's the main provider in our family right now. And we are equal. So I don't want to like come in on top and be like, well, we need to be doing this and we need to be doing this because he's going to shut down and we
Yeah.
need to be in partners of this. And I think
Yeah.
the infidelity comes when I'm like, well, I'm just going to go do this and I'll go and invest. I won't tell him. And I'll, make the money back or, be like, well, I'll be really defensive of like, well, I have to do this. Da, 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 da. I didn't even give him a chance. Like I didn't even give him a chance because I felt like a little shame because I didn't share that with him. Women, my sister, she's passed away now, but like in her marriage, that's how they would fight. He would go buy golf clubs and she would go buy running shoes and then he would go do this and they just run up the credit card. And I didn't ever want to be like that. I didn't want to like have all these material things and do it out of spite. And so it's like if I invest in something, I feel like I have to justify it and like prove myself like this is worth it. And that can get hairy because, even like a little course or a book or whatever about parenting or motherhood, like, and I think for women, a lot of times it's like we justify our purchase, or if we're angry at something, or we feel inadequate, unworthy, like, or we don't have enough attention or significant, we'll go buy something. It's like, then we got to like justify it.
Yeah.
Like I can't buy something just out of joy or what, looking at that. And so that's probably been my, infidelity or just like looking at money differently and be an open conversation with my husband because I don't know. I just feel like if I spend it, then he's spending more hours away from our family, then I feel guilty. So it's like, if I spend it, then I feel like I need to make it up in my businesses, my side hustles, my things like, to justify it.
No, thank you for sharing that. Like, and that's interesting because I heard from you that time is very, very valuable at the end of the day. And that's,
Yep.
Another reason why you do what you do.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
So as we start to kind of wrap things up, I always like to ask, what are some tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money maybe differently in your own household?
So for me, when we get extra money, we are constantly, how can we invest this? Like, how can we invest this? Now we have a little bit in savings, investing when we were young, but also like, if you're on here and you're like, Tab, I'm 35. I feel like it's too late. It's never too late.
No,
And we
I say
did
that
ours.
too. Never. You
Yes,
got to
it's
start somewhere, right? Wherever that
yes.
is.
Money is a talent. Being able to make money, create money, invest money, that is a talent. When you can do that or surround yourself with people who can educate you on that, how to do it, correctly, we're having it work. So getting that knowledge, like what you said with the financial literacy and knowing that that is out there for you.
I mean, one thing I will piggyback on what you had said. So just me being in the world that I am and being a financial
Yes.
advisor and being licensed, I always like people to have emergency money on the sidelines as first line of defense to go to when
Yes.
things hit the fan. I mean, I'm a big fan of being diversified and doing a little of
Yes.
everything when it makes sense and you have it in your financial plan. But Also,
Yeah.
you want to have that liquidity and that emergency money too, and everybody is so different. So you can't
Yes.
blanket statements, and
No.
again, everybody has their own individual situation and what that looks like. And it's always important to have those individual conversations as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, good. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing everything today.
Well, thank you for having me. This was fun. This was a little different topic than so it was fun. It was good. It was therapeutic.
Oh, good, good.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.